the idea of myth really fascinating, as it's evident in every culture, whether it's ancient or primitive or contemporary. The same kind of stories crop up, and which is why I find it such an interesting outreach into society, and think that by comparing and cross-referencing such stories, we can learn a lot about ourselves and our modern society, about context, and by changing context with the same story, it can mean a completely different thing, or it can, but there's always the same kind of lines running through no matter kind of where these stories come from. They often have similar messages. I guess it is a sculpture. It's it's hard to label it, but whether it's installation or sculpture, I'll come back to that in a sec. So this is called Adam. It's based on an article I read that tells us about how the sculpture of Adam made by Rodin was found at ground zero after falling from a gallery sort of on, I think it was the 100th floor in the World Trade Center. Okay. So that in itself is just this amazing story where we've got a very literal kind of fall of man, where you've got Adam just falling along with everything else, I think like a quarter of a mile or something. And the statue itself was found pretty much unharmed. It was snapped at the ankles at the weakest point of the sculpture. But other than that, you've got this amazingly intact sculpture having fallen such a long way. And I think it's such a great story that I wouldn't say this piece of work is for glory, but it's just a section of the work, and I'm continuing to develop kind of a body of work around this story. But this particular piece, I wanted to sort of give focus to the feet and the base of the sculpture, although the entire Rodin piece was found kind of pretty much intact, apart from the snap. Just the idea that we think of it as our grounding point, our base, like the strength and the pedestal that supports such a beautiful object. Which brings me back to the idea of whether it's sculpture or installation, whereas normally this would kind of be the bottom, the pedestal of the object. Now in our installation, the commercial trolley and all this industrial rubbish becomes its pedestal, and then the feet become, an object of sculpture in themselves. So I wanted to incorporate the idea of the mess and the destruction. So I guess it's also a comment about the state of how we perceive classical art as something. So I wanted to capture all this rubble, and I wanted it to have a sense of, aggression or violence, or proof to a history of violence. Something obviously with a lot of force has decapitated the feet and bent the metal. I wanted it to be like an admonition of the fall of man, the fall of society. So it's this thing that's happened before and we talk about, but it's almost it's still going on, and it's something, whether it's not a warning, but pointing to the facts of letting us look at the fall of our society. Obviously, I realise it's a very few people, if anyone has ever have heard of this story. So I wanted to make the piece work without that knowledge, and keep it quite ambivalent, as to if you were to approach the scene not knowing what's going on, just a piece to make people ask questions. What's gone on here? What's caused this destruction? Where's the rest of the statue? And who's picking up the pieces with this kind of bizarre collection of junk and sculpture, or something that was once a sculpture and now might be junk.